Welcome to Equal Entertainment. I'm Tracy E. Gilchrist. Talks have resumed between Hollywood writers and the heads of major media companies, but the protests have not stopped. They picketed outside of Netflix's offices in Los Angeles on the 143rd day of the writers' union strike. The most recent round of negotiations was said to be productive, but still no deal. When one is reached, it will still need to be ratified by rank and file members. The economic impact of the writers and actors strikes has now surpassed $5 billion and is being felt across multiple industries. In New York alone, the work stoppage for 11 major productions has cost the state $1.3 billion in taxes. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, motion picture and sound recording industries lost 34,000 jobs between August and May. And that's not including losses for entertainment industry adjacent businesses like prop shops. NFL star Travis Kelcey is talking about his rumored link to Taylor Swift. Kelcey isn't confirming the speculation, but he calls the attention hilarious, like an old game of telephone. However, he also jokingly asked reporters to stop asking his brother Jason about it. The Kansas City Chief tight end said his brother appeared to be joking when he said they were dating. Kelcey says the ball is now in her court, inviting her to a game at Arrowhead Stadium. Actress Sophie Turner is suing her husband, Joe Jonas, demanding their children be returned to England. According to the court documents, the Game of Thrones star alleges their two daughters are being wrongfully retained in New York City. She says they plan to return to England with the children, but Jonas refused to hand over their passports. In a statement, a representative for Jonas says the singer's impression was that they would work together toward an amicable co-parenting setup. Jonas filed for divorce on September 5th after 4 years of marriage. Actor Angus Cloud died of an accidental overdose. That's the official word from the Alameda County Coroner's Office. Cloud died back in July from a lethal combination of fentanyl, cocaine, and meth. The 25-year-old was best known for his role in the HBO drama Euphoria. Cloud had a couple of projects in the works, including an untitled thriller from Universal Pictures. And he stars alongside Pedro Pascal in Freaky Tales. Adiba Jaigirdar is an award-winning author born in Bangladesh and living in Dublin, Ireland since the age of 10. Her stories highlight her heritage and true experiences of many people of color and queer people. I talked with her about her new book, The Do's and Donuts of Love.
Well, first, I would love to ask you a little bit, for folks who have not yet read the book, what your inspiration for this story is.
So this book was very much inspired by the city of Dublin, which is where I live, and it's where I grew up. And a few years ago, about 2015, 2016, we had this very random donut craze in Dublin. And there were just donut shops like around every corner in town. Sometimes I would walk down a street and there'd be 2 or 3 donut shops on the same street, sometimes just across the road from each other. And I just thought this was so random and so quirky and just really, really fun. And there were even like a few like scandals that came out of all of these donut shops. So I was really interested in that. And I thought it'd be so fun to kind of write a book related to that. And at the same time, you know, in Bangladeshi culture, which is where I'm from Bangladesh, food is such a huge part of it. Sweets are such a huge part of it. So I kind of combined the inspiration from the donut craze in Dublin with my culture's love of food.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Yes, and it's such a big part of the story. And what does it mean to you to be able to kind of shine a light on Bangladeshi cuisine, which, in the book you even point out, everyone thinks they know it because they think they know Indian cuisine, but it's not the same.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just such a joy to be able to share this part of my culture. Everybody does know Indian cuisine, but even at the same time, they don't know the specifics of Indian cuisine. They don't know like all the regional differences. And it's similar to, Bangladeshi cuisine. We have similarities to Indian cuisine, but we also have so many specific dishes, so many regional differences. And food has always been this big part of my culture. And we often use it to kind of show our love for each other and to kind of share with our community. So I see it in the same way, writing about food. I think for me, it's a way to kind of share that part of my community with everyone, share that joy with everyone.
Your lead character, Shireen, is a queer character. And there are other queer characters in the novel. The queerness is not, there's no meal made out of it. It's just who they are. There's no coming out story. So would you please talk about being able to tell this story without having to do all this lead up to kind of a reveal about their identities and what that means to you to be able to just include that in the story?
I think it's so important to have books where queer people can just kind of exist and just have fun and romance and, challenges that are not necessarily to do with their queerness. I do think, there's definitely space for books where there are coming out stories and characters are dealing with, challenges to their queerness. But I think it's great that we have both kinds of books existing now. For me, with Shirin, I think a lot of people would have maybe expected her dealing with a lot more challenges, a lot more homophobias. But at the end of the day, I kind of just wanted to write like a fun, punny book about baking. And I think it's great that a queer book like that gets to exist.
Yes, wonderful. Well, so you have the queer folks. However, Shirin is also a person of color, and so is Chris, who is part of this reality competition. And I think it really touches on something that at least I've noticed here in the United States is obviously these reality competitions tend to bring out racism in social media fandoms. And you do touch on that in this book. And would you speak to that aspect of it and putting that out?
Yes, I think, existing as a person of color on the internet or just as a marginalized person can be very tough. I think a lot of the times just having an opinion at all can, get you into a lot of like heat online. And I think it's especially difficult when you're in some ways a public figure, like Chris and Shirin kind of are when they get into the reality TV show. And a lot of that was kind of also inspired by things that have happened in the Irish media specifically, because there have been times when, um, if Irish people of color have been featured in ads or they've just been visible in the media as well. And just the backlash to it online has been absolutely awful. And kind of seeing that as an Irish person of color was quite upsetting. And so when I started writing this book and I thought about Shirin and Chris being people of color and being kind of public figures or facing the public in a specific way, I felt that it felt authentic to write that story where they were facing a backlash. It's obviously like an awful thing that it happens at all, but unfortunately it does. And I thought it was right to kind of it was appropriate to write that authentically into the story. Yeah, so something that was very important to me as well in terms of writing this novel is writing Shirin as a fat character. I think there's unfortunately still such a lack of fat representation in general, but also specifically, representation of fat queer people and fat people of color. And Shirin is all of those things. And, I wanted to write her as just this very joyous fat person who loved food and loved desserts and loved, making food. And there was no issue with that. And that's kind of, how I wrote the book.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you for that.
You can watch the Advocate channel live by downloading our app in the Apple or Google Play Store. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. For the Advocate channel, I'm Tracy E. Gilchrist, and thank you for watching.